Okay, so before I start talking about what to actually do during the intervention, next I just want to talk about a few principles of effective intervention with these kinds of kids. So let's keep in mind that kids who have reading difficulties have experienced a lot of failure. They're pretty miserable, they're not having a lot of fun reading probably, and they basically may be given up on this whole process. It's also very possible they may have ADHD. And these kids are going to be bored, hard to motivate, and also on top of that hating reading. So it really takes a very careful approach to the whole thing. So the first principle that I would say is that you need to make this process totally fail-proof. Kids need to not be making mistakes. They need to feel good about themselves. They need to be experiencing success. So that's why I really advocate for first doing a comprehensive assessment, because if you start too high, then these kids are going to feel frustrated and they're going to attribute that to your relationship and your tutoring rather than, just to their difficulties. So they're going to start hating you and they're going to start hating tutoring, which is the absolute last thing that we want to happen. So you really have to carefully ensure that whatever you're doing is at their level. It's not too easy because you want them to be constantly pushing themselves and making progress, but it's definitely not too hard because they've already experienced a lot of failure and probably don't feel very excited about doing things like phonics. So one of the ways that you really want to make it fail-proof is by ensuring that you are using what could be called a gradual release of responsibility. Could also be called working in the child's zone of proximal development. What I like to call it is explain, model, practice, praise. So before you expect the child to do anything, you're going to very briefly explain what they're going to have to do. So that means you have to think it through in advance. You can't just throw activities out there and sort of go with it, right? So you're going to say, okay, we're going to practice today hearing every sound in a word. So when I say a word like cat, I want you to tap every sound in the word with your fingers like this. K, a, t, right? So it's a simple explanation. Then you're going to model. So you're going to show the child what you're going to do. So here, let me do an example first. Let's try the word cat. I would say k, a, t, cat. Okay, now you do the word cat with me. So then you're going to do what might be called a shared attempt. So first you do, then we do, and then the child's going to do. So I do, we do, you do is another kind of gradual release of responsibility thing. So I do it, cat, cat. We do it together, cat, cat. Then you say, okay, I want you to try it on your own. Now I want you to try the word cat. And then they're going to go cat. So you've done your explain, model, practice together, and then they're going to practice by themselves, okay? And then you're going to praise. Oh my gosh, wow, you heard every sound in the word k, a, t. You listened really carefully. So you want to praise something specific about what they're doing and their effort. They're trying really hard. Not, oh, cool job, or you're so smart, but like you heard every sound, or you listened so carefully, or you really followed instructions. You're working really hard. That's the kind of praise you want to give. Okay, so again, explain what you need the child to do briefly, model, show them what they need to do, practice with them, then have them practice alone, and then praise how they've done. And then you're going to increasingly get more difficult while still, incorporating these steps. So if you're doing 3 sound words, you start with cat. You do it, they can do cat. Then you want to go a little bit trickier. So then maybe you just change one of the sounds. So then you do hat. And you may need to model it first. So if they're not so good, you might say, okay, I'm going to try a new word. It's going to be hat. Okay, you think while I show you. At, hat. Okay, now you try the word hat. At, hat. Okay, I want you to do this time all by yourself. Can you do the word hat? Awesome. Okay, now I'm going to pick another one. I want you to try the word sat. Should we do it together or do you want to try it by yourself? So you really are taking this super, super slowly, and anytime you introduce a change, you are again modeling and doing it with them. And I have an example actually of a video where I'm doing that with a child. So I'll link the video below so you can kind of see how I'm constantly just slightly increasing the difficulty while always explaining, modeling, practicing with them, and then praising them as I go along. So it never gets too hard. Another super, super cannot miss this important component is having a lot of fun. Because when kids are happy and motivated, they're excited and they're putting in a lot of effort, they're trying harder, and they're learning more. So fun isn't like, oh, we just have to make it a game so they'll do it. Fun actually helps with their learning and helps with your relationship. So it's very beneficial. So you want to play lots of games and incorporate children's interests however you can. If they're passionate about soccer, Barbies, mysteries, ancient Egypt, science, whatever it is that they love, that's what you want to try to incorporate because it makes it inherently interesting and motivating, or one might call it intrinsically interesting and motivating. So you want to incorporate their interests, make things as absolutely fun and enjoyable as possible. And a good tip for that is like, if you're excited to go and do your tutoring intervention because you're like, I made this super cool soccer game, kid's gonna love it, that means that you're doing something that's fun. If you're like, oh, I got this worksheet, I guess we'll see if they like it, it's probably not fun enough, okay? So you gotta be pumped up and they gotta be pumped up. They're not pumped up, they're not learning the way they could be learning. So you want it to be fail-proof. You want there to be gradual release of responsibility. You want to make it super fun and incorporate their interests. And then at the heart of what I would call direct instruction is what you need to be doing here is lots and lots of practice doing exactly the skill that you need them to be able to do without thinking. So it's not talking about it, it's not doing a bunch of unrelated worksheets, it's not reading some books. It's like if they need to look at S and say S, they have looked at S and said S 100 times today. So the idea is that you're building in so much repetition and practice. You're exactly teaching them the skill that they need to be able to execute, and you're making it so that it's totally automatic. So that's why you don't really want things like rules and games and tricks, like two vowels go walking, the first one does the talking. First of all, that is not right. It only is true in about 50% of cases. Second of all, no one when they read gets to a book and goes, oh, A-I-O. Oh, that's two vowels. Oh, what's the rule? Okay, when two vowels go walking, the first one does the talking. Okay, what's the first one? A. What does it say? Ah. Oh, no, wait. A. Okay, so it's going to say A. Rain. Way too much thinking, right? It's not supposed to be a process that's making you think. It's supposed to be automatic. So what instead would be direct would be to take AI as a pattern. It says A, and has the child look at that and say A. That's much simpler so that when they see that, they just see it and say A. They don't have to think about rules and apply all kinds of patterns and count syllables and crazy stuff like that, right? That's not how reading really works. So you want it to be directly teaching them letter sounds, letter patterns, or strategies that they can use, but that they use quickly, automatically, and have practiced many, many times. Part of that direct instruction piece too is that the child has many opportunities to respond. This sort of fits with the practice component, but what it means is that it's not you talking, or they've practiced it a couple times. They're constantly responding. They're constantly doing something. So if they're not doing it, then they're not practicing it. And so opportunities to respond means that they're very actively engaged in practicing whatever skill that you're working on and responding in the moment. That comes along also with being fast-paced. So you don't want to take forever and waste a lot of time with explanations and getting out materials and talking to the kid and then having the kid do one thing and then you got to go get more stuff. No, you want it to be fast-paced, which means you need to have planned in advance exactly what you're going to do so that you have lots of activities and you're moving through them at a really quick pace. So again, some of the main principles that you want to remember are that you're going to want to make your intervention fail-proof. You're going to want to make it fun. You're going to want to use gradual release of responsibility. You're going to want to use direct instruction, which involves lots of repetition and practice with tons of opportunities to respond and a really fast-paced teaching environment. But a teaching environment that makes the child feel safe and like they're accomplishing things. So these are the principles to help maybe keep in the back of your mind while you're planning all aspects of your intervention.